My brother tricked my fiancée on the day of our wedding into believing I cheated. They believed him. But 3 years later, my sister called me with news that changed everything. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Sup, Reddit. So this happened a few years back, but I'm finally ready to talk about it. Fair warning, this gets wild and honestly sounds like something straight out of a movie, but I swear this actually happened to me. You know how they say family is everything? Yeah, well, sometimes family's the one holding the knife behind your back. My brother taught me that lesson the hard way. This whole mess started way before I, 29 male, even met my ex-fiancée Candace. It started with my brother Zach and his ex-girlfriend Haley. Now Zach wasn't just dating this girl. Dude was straight up obsessed. Like, we're talking fatal attraction level stuff here. He'd been with Haley for 3 years and was already planning their whole future together. Had the ring picked out. Our whole family knew about it because he wouldn't shut up about how perfect she was. Haley was decent looking, I guess, but nothing special to me. Zach thought she was God's gift to Earth, though. The guy would literally plan his weekends around her work schedule and got genuinely upset if she wanted to hang out with her girlfriends instead of him. Looking back, Haley never seemed as into him as he was into her. During family dinners, she'd be polite but distant. She'd check her phone constantly and always had some excuse to leave early. Zach would make these grand romantic gestures, surprise trips, expensive jewelry, elaborate date nights, and she'd just seem bored. But Zach was blind to it all. The one person who saw through this whole thing was my sister Lisa. She's 2 years younger than me, works as a nurse at the county hospital, and has always been the most level-headed person in our family. Lisa knew it from day one, said there was something fake about her, like she was always performing instead of just being herself. That girl is playing Zach like a fiddle, Lisa told me once. And when she's done with him, it's going to get ugly. Then came the family barbecue from hell. This was supposed to be our annual 4th of July thing. Whole extended family, neighbors, the usual crowd. Zach had been hyping it up for weeks because he was planning to propose. Everything was going normal at first. Uncle Jim was cracking bad dad jokes, Cousin Dave was showing off on the volleyball court, and Zach was being his usual over-the-top self. Then that moment came. Suddenly, when the noise started fading, Zach got on one knee in front of everyone. As we all watched waiting for Haley's word, she did something unexpected. She just snapped. She just stood up and just dropped this bomb on everyone. I can't do this. I don't love you, Zach. I never have. I've been trying to force it because you're a good guy, but I can't marry someone when I have feelings for someone else. The whole backyard went dead silent. Even the neighbor's dog stopped barking. Zach just stared at her like she'd spoken in a foreign language. Then she looked directly at me and said the words that would basically ruin my life. I'm in love with your brother. I had no idea what to say. We'd only ever had polite small talk at family events. That's it. But Zach? Dude completely lost his mind. Started yelling about how I must have been sneaking around behind his back, how I was a backstabbing piece of shit, all this crazy stuff. I tried to explain that I had literally no idea Haley felt this way, that I'd never encouraged it, never even thought about her like that. Didn't matter. In his head, I'd somehow stolen his girl, and that was that. Haley tried to calm things down, explaining that it wasn't anything I'd done, that she'd just developed feelings over time. But Zach wasn't hearing any of it. He stormed out, tires screeching, the whole dramatic exit. Haley left right after him, crying and apologizing to everyone. Lisa was the only one who came up to me afterward. "This isn't your fault," she said. "That girl was never going to marry him, and deep down he knows it. That should have been the end of it, right?" Girl realizes she's not into her boyfriend, makes a messy confession. Everyone moves on with their lives. But Zach? This dude turned it into his personal mission to destroy me. So here's where things get really messed up. After Haley's confession, I genuinely thought Zach would cool off after a few days. We'd had fights before. What brothers haven't? And he'd always gotten over it. First thing Zach did was blow up Haley's phone for about a week straight. She showed me some of the texts later. Yeah, she kept trying to contact me after the barbecue thing, but I shut that down real quick. This dude was sending her like 30 messages a day. Everything from begging her to come back to calling her every name in the book. Real nice guy behavior, you know? When Haley finally blocked him, that's when he turned his attention to me. At first, it was just your typical sibling revenge stuff. He'd accidentally eat food I'd left in my parents' fridge when I visited. He'd conveniently forget to pass along messages when people called the house looking for me. Small, petty garbage that I mostly ignored. But then he started getting creative, and that's when I should have known this wasn't going to blow over. He went after my social circle first. He'd leave passive-aggressive comments on my posts. Stuff like, "Wow, that's funny coming from you," or "Interesting take from someone who..." Then he'd delete them before I could screenshot. My best friend Tom started acting weird around me first. We'd been tight since high school, played on the same intramural basketball team in college, hung out every weekend, the whole deal. Suddenly Tom's acting all distant, giving me one-word answers, declining invites to hang out. I finally cornered him and asked what his problem was. Turns out Zach had been feeding him this story about how I'd been talking trash about him behind his back for years. Tom believed it because, and I quote, "Why would your own brother lie about something like that?" This became Zach's signature move. He'd tell people I'd said something awful about them, always with just enough specific details to make it believable. None of it was true, but Zach knew exactly what buttons to push with each person. The work thing was what really got to me, though. I was working at this small tech company right out of college, maybe 30 employees total. Great job, good pay, cool boss who treated everyone like adults. I was actually up for a promotion to team lead, which would have been huge for a guy only 2 years out of school. Then weird stuff started happening. My boss mentioned in passing that he'd heard I was interviewing at other companies. I wasn't. A coworker asked me why I'd told people the company was poorly managed and heading for bankruptcy. I never said that. It took me months to figure out that Zach had been calling the office, pretending to be different people. A recruiter who'd spoken with me, a friend who was concerned about things I'd said, even a fake client who claimed I'd been unprofessional. This sociopath was literally creating fake identities to sabotage my career. The promotion went to someone else. My boss started treating me differently. The whole office vibe changed, and I couldn't figure out why everyone suddenly thought I was this arrogant, disloyal employee who talked trash about the company. When I confronted Zach about it, he played dumb. "I don't know what you're talking about, man. Maybe people are just seeing the real you now," with this smug smile that made me want to punch him in his stupid face. I tried going to my parents, thinking they'd talk some sense into him. Big mistake. They'd already bought into his narrative that I was this manipulative person who'd stolen his girlfriend and was now playing victim. Mom actually said, "Well, honey, maybe this is karma for what you did to Haley's relationship." What I did? I literally didn't do anything except exist in the same family as a girl who had feelings I didn't ask for and didn't want. But according to my parents, Zach was the victim here. I was just causing drama and needed to take responsibility for my actions. The only person who saw through Zach's bullshit was Lisa. She'd call me after family dinners where Zach would put on his victim act, telling me not to listen to their crap. She tried to defend me to our parents, but they'd already made up their minds. Okay, guys, this is where the story really goes off the rails. This is where Zach's revenge went from petty sibling rivalry to straight-up psychotic. I met Candace about 2 years after the Haley disaster. By then, I'd basically written off my relationship with Zach and was trying to move on with my life. I'd gotten a new job at a different company. The old one never really recovered from all Zach's sabotage, moved to my own apartment across town, and was actually doing pretty well for myself. She was funny, smart, had this dry sense of humor that matched mine perfectly. She grew up in a small town about an hour outside the city, came from this big Irish family where everyone talked over each other and had opinions about everything. Complete opposite of my family's passive-aggressive nonsense. We dated for about a year and a half before I proposed. She said yes before I even finished the question. We both had stable jobs, similar life goals. It felt right. Planning the wedding was actually fun, which everyone told us was rare. Candace's family welcomed me immediately. For the first time in years, I felt like I was part of a real family again. My parents were supportive too, which surprised me. They seemed genuinely happy that I'd found someone. Lisa was thrilled for me. She loved Candace from the moment they met, said it was obvious how happy we made each other. She helped with wedding planning, threw Candace a bridal shower, even stood up as one of my groomsmen since we were doing a mixed wedding party. Having her support meant everything to me. Zach, on the other hand, had been suspiciously quiet during the whole engagement period. He showed up to family dinners when I brought Candace around, made polite conversation, even congratulated us when we announced the wedding date. I should have known something was up. This was way too normal for him. But I was happy, you know. I wanted to believe that maybe Zach had finally moved on, found some peace, and decided to let the Haley thing go. The wedding was set for a Saturday in June at this venue about 20 minutes outside town. Nothing too crazy, maybe 80 people, outdoor ceremony, reception in the same building. Candace wanted something simple and elegant, and honestly, I would have married her in a gas station bathroom if that's what she wanted. We decided to keep it traditional, not seeing each other the night before the wedding. Candace was staying at her parents' house with her bridesmaids, and I was supposed to be having some bachelor party that my friends had planned. Except I wasn't really feeling the whole party scene. I was nervous, excited, just wanted some quiet time to think about everything. So instead of hitting up bars with the guys, I got a room at this hotel near the venue. Told everyone I just wanted to chill out, watch some TV, get a good night's sleep before the big day. My friends respected it, even turned off my phone around 9 p.m. because I didn't want any distractions. By the time I woke up the next morning, got dressed, and headed to the venue, it was already over. I just didn't know it yet. This is the hardest part of the story to write. Even now, years later, thinking about that day makes me feel sick. I showed up to the venue about 2 hours before the ceremony was supposed to start. I was actually in a great mood, thinking about how in a few hours I'd be married to the love of my life. The parking lot should have been my first clue that something was wrong. Way too many cars for that early in the day, and I could see people standing around in groups, talking in those hushed, serious voices that usually means something bad had happened. I walked into the venue. The decorations were still up. The flowers were in place, but there was this atmosphere of, I don't even know how to describe it, like walking into a your own funeral. Candace's maid of honor, Maria, saw me first. The look on her face was pure disgust. Not sadness, not disappointment, disgust. She walked right up to me and slapped me across the face, hard enough that my ears rang. "How could you do this to her? How could you do this to Candace?" she screamed. Everyone in the room turned to stare at us. Candace's family, my groomsmen, random guests who'd already arrived, all of them looking at me like I was some kind of monster. I had no idea what she was talking about. I asked where Candace was, said I needed to talk to her, figure out what was going on. Maria laughed, this bitter, angry sound that made my skin crawl. "She's gone, you piece of trash. She's gone, and she's never coming back. She knows what you did." That's when Zach stepped out of the crowd. My own brother, wearing his groomsman tux, looking like he was attending my execution instead of my wedding. And he had this satisfied expression on his face. "I'm sorry, man," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I didn't want to be the one to tell her, but I couldn't let her marry you without knowing the truth." He pulled out his phone and started showing people photos. I couldn't see them from where I was standing, but I could see everyone's reactions. Shock, disgust, anger. Whatever Zach was showing them, it was convincing as hell. "This is Jessica," Zach announced to the room. "She came forward because she couldn't live with the guilt anymore. She's been seeing my brother for 4 months, including last night." A woman stepped forward from the back of the room, mid-20s, blonde hair, wearing a dress that was way too formal for someone who was supposedly just dropping by to confess an affair. She looked nervous as hell, kept glancing at Zach like she was waiting for him to tell her what to say next. But she played her part perfectly. "I'm so sorry," she said, and I'll give her credit. She sounded genuinely upset. "I never meant for it to go this far. He told me he was going to call off the wedding, that he was going to leave her for me. When I found out he was still going through with it, I couldn't stay quiet. I tried to speak, tried to explain that I'd never seen this woman before in my life, but nobody wanted to hear it. Zach showed them text messages between me and Jessica, intimate photos that supposedly proved we'd been together, even a video that he claimed showed me and her together the previous night. The worst part was watching my own parents just stand there in silence. They didn't defend me, didn't question Zach's story, didn't even look like they were surprised. My mom actually nodded along when Zach explained how disappointed he was to have to expose his own brother. I kept asking to see this supposed evidence, demanding that someone show me these photos and messages that supposedly proved I was cheating. But Zach played it perfectly. He said he'd already shown everything to Candace and her family, that they'd seen enough, that there was no point in humiliating me further by making it public. Someone mentioned calling Candace, trying to get her to come back so we could work this out. That's when Zach dropped the final bomb. She doesn't want to see him. She made that very clear. She said if he tries to contact her, she'll call the police. The room went completely silent after that. Even I didn't know what to say. The woman I was supposed to marry in less than 2 hours thought I was a cheating scumbag. I stood there in my tux, in front of all our friends and family, and watched my entire life crumble. The wedding was off. Candace was gone. Everyone I cared about thought I was a lying, cheating piece of garbage. And my own brother was the one holding the match that burned it all down. I didn't even fight it at that point. What was the point? Nobody was going to believe me over the evidence Zach had manufactured. Nobody was going to take my word over the testimony of his mystery woman. The damage was done. I walked out of that venue and drove straight home. Didn't talk to anyone, didn't try to explain myself, didn't even take off the tux. Just sat in my apartment and stared at the wall, trying to process what had just happened. My phone started ringing around dinner time. Candace's number. For a split second, I thought maybe she'd realized this was all a setup, that she wanted to hear my side of the story. I answered on the first ring. "Don't ever contact me again," she said. Her voice was cold, completely different from the woman I'd fallen in love with. "If you call me, if you text me, if you come to my house or my work, I will call the police. We're done. Forever." She hung up before I could say a word. But then Zach decided to show up. He showed up at my apartment around midnight, still wearing his tux, looking like he'd just won the lottery. I opened the door. He smiled at me. Actually smiled. "How's it feel?" he asked. That's when something inside me snapped. All the years of his petty revenge, all the lies, all the manipulation, it all came rushing back at once. I grabbed him by his shirt collar and shoved him against the hallway wall. "You destroyed my life," I said through gritted teeth. "You destroyed my life over some girl who never even wanted you." Zach laughed while I was choking him against the wall. "And I'd do it again," he said. "You took everything from me. Haley, my future, my happiness. So I took yours. Fair trade." I wanted to beat the living hell out of him right there. I wanted to smash his face into the wall until he took it all back, until he admitted what he'd done to everyone who'd believed his lies. But I knew that's exactly what he wanted, for me to prove I was the violent, unstable person he'd painted me as. So I opened my door and shoved him out. He walked away whistling like he'd just had the best day of his life. Now here's the thing. I got stupid. I should have recorded that conversation, but anger got me. I wasn't thinking straight and all I saw was red. So I did one thing which seemed like the best solution at that time. I walked away and moved on. I spent the next 3 years trying to rebuild my life, and mostly succeeding. Got a better job, moved to a different city. I was doing okay. The only person from my family I stayed in contact with was Lisa. She'd moved out to Denver for work, but we talked every few weeks. She never bought into Zach's version of events, and she kept me updated on the family drama I was missing. According to Lisa, Zach and Candace had gotten together officially about 6 months after my ruined wedding. Yup, you heard that right. They moved in together, got married within a year, had a kid pretty quickly after that. From the outside, it looked like the perfect family. Zach had gotten everything he wanted, and Candace seemed happy with her choice. But Lisa saw through it from day one. "He doesn't love her," she told me during one of our calls. "He just loves that he won. The second the novelty wears off, this whole thing is going to implode." She was right. Zach wasn't the devoted, loving husband. Once he had her locked down, he basically stopped trying. He'd work late constantly, blow off family events, forget anniversaries and birthdays. Classic behavior of someone who was only interested in the chase, not the actual relationship. Lisa started getting weird phone calls from Candace, asking if Zach's behavior was normal, if he'd always been so distant and selfish. Lisa tried to stay neutral at first, but it was getting harder to ignore the obvious problems in their marriage. Then last month, she called me with news that changed everything. "It's all falling apart," she said. "Candace found out Zach was cheating. She's filing for divorce and Zach just ran away to God knows where. But you're never going to believe who he was cheating with. Jessica, the same woman who'd helped Zach frame me at my wedding, had been sleeping with him behind Candace's back for years, possibly even before my wedding day. The irony was so perfect. The same woman Zach had used to destroy my relationship had been destroying his the entire time. But here's where it gets interesting. When Candace confronted Jessica, expecting her to deny everything or at least show some shame, Jessica broke down and confessed everything. Not just the affair, everything. The fake photos, the staged text messages, the video, the whole elaborate setup Zach had orchestrated to ruin my wedding. Lisa had been waiting for this moment for 3 years. When Candace called her, sobbing and asking for my contact information, Lisa was ready. "I need to see him," Candace had told Lisa. "I need to apologize. I need to make this right somehow." That's when I realized what I needed to do. "I've got a plan," I told Lisa. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" Lisa asked. "I'm thinking it's time for some justice," I said. "I'm in," she said immediately. "Whatever you need me to do." I had Lisa reach out to Jessica through a mutual friend, posing as someone who just wanted to understand what had happened. We set up a meeting at a coffee shop in Denver, with Lisa claiming she was trying to help Candace process everything and needed to hear Jessica's side of the story. I flew out to Denver the next week. Lisa had briefed me on exactly how to play this. Sympathetic, Not accusatory, just a brother trying to understand why his family had fallen apart. Jessica was a mess when we met her. She'd obviously been crying, looked like she hadn't slept in days. The guilt was eating her alive, and it was written all over her face. Lisa played it perfectly, acting like the concerned sister who just wanted to help everyone heal from this tragedy. She asked Jessica to walk us through exactly what had happened, claiming it would help Candace understand how things had gone so wrong. Jessica spilled everything. How Zach had approached her 8 months before my wedding, offering to pay her $5,000 to help him teach his brother a lesson. How they'd staged all the photos and text messages over the course of several weeks. How he had coached her on exactly what to say and when to say it. But the real bomb came when she admitted that she and Zach had been hooking up the entire time they were planning the setup. He told me he was going to leave Candace after a few years anyway, Jessica said, crying openly now. He said once he proved that he could take anything away from his brother, he'd be done with her too. It was always supposed to be temporary. Lisa kept her talking for over an hour, getting every detail of Zach's plan on record. By the time we left that coffee shop, we had enough evidence to bury him. The next morning, I filed a police report for fraud and conspiracy. I also contacted a lawyer about filing a civil lawsuit for defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and interference with contract. Apparently, my ruined wedding counted as that. When the detective assigned to my case heard Jessica's confession, he actually whistled. "This is one of the most elaborate revenge schemes I've ever seen," he said. "Your brother put a lot of work into destroying your life. Problem is, he's in the wind now. His wife says he cleaned out their joint account and hasn't been home in a week." Zach knew this was all going to come out eventually. He'd been planning his escape route just like he'd planned everything else. But running just made him look guilty as hell. And it gave us time to build an airtight case while he was hiding wherever cowards go to hide. The detective issued a warrant for Zach's arrest, but warned me it might take time to track him down. While we waited for Zach to slip up, Candace filed for divorce and got emergency custody of their daughter. She also provided additional evidence to support my case. Text messages between her and Zach, financial records showing payments to Jessica, even the original fake photos he'd shown her. My parents finally called me after they learned about the police investigation. They were devastated. Couldn't believe their good son had been capable of something so calculated and cruel. They begged me to come home, to let them make it up for me. I told them we'd see what happened after Zach faced justice. Some bridges can't be rebuilt until the person who burned them down pays the price. I had evidence, I had witnesses, and I had 3 years of rage motivating me to see this through to the end. The hunt for Zach was just getting started. 4 months after Zach disappeared, and let me tell you guys, the legal system moves slower than a government DMV on a Monday morning. But we've been busy building what my lawyer calls the most documented case of sibling revenge he's ever seen. First off, Jessica agreed to cooperate fully with the prosecution in exchange for immunity. Smart move on her part, because the alternative was potentially facing conspiracy charges herself. Turns out Zach had paid her way more than the initial $5,000. Over the 8 months they'd spent planning my destruction, he'd given her nearly $15,000 in consultation fees for helping perfect their little revenge plot. The paper trail was extensive, and it proved this wasn't some spur-of-the-moment decision. It was a carefully orchestrated campaign. My lawyer is this old-school prosecutor-turned-defense attorney who's seen every kind of case you can imagine. When I first showed him Jessica's recorded confession, he actually laughed. "Your brother is either the dumbest criminal I've ever seen, or he thought he was so smart that he'd never get caught," Dave said. Either way, he's screwed. The civil lawsuit moved faster than the criminal case. Since Zach had fled, the court allowed us to proceed in absentia, meaning we could move forward without him being physically present. We filed for damages, including lost wages, emotional distress, and punitive damages for the sheer maliciousness of what he'd done. But then Candace reached out to me directly. "I need to see you," she said, during our first phone call in years. I agreed to meet her. Lisa came with me for moral support. Candace looked like hell. She brought their daughter Emma with her. The little girl was quiet, well-behaved, but you could see the confusion in her eyes. "I know nothing I say can fix what I did to you," Candace started, and she was crying before she even finished the sentence. "I destroyed your life based on lies, and I'll never forgive myself for that." She explained how Zach had manipulated her. I listened to her apology, and while I appreciated it, I could tell there was something else. Then she continued, "I want to know if there's any chance we could try again," she said quietly. "I know it would take time. I know you'd need to learn to trust me, but we were so good together before Zach destroyed everything." I looked at this woman who had once been the love of my life. What we had was destroyed years ago. "I know, but please just give us a chance." No, Candace. It's in the past now. I moved on. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I explained that this wasn't about holding grudges or being unable to forgive. Some things, once broken, can't be fixed no matter how much both people want it. Before we left, I looked at Emma again. This innocent kid had no idea that her father was a sociopath who destroyed multiple lives for fun. She's going to need stability, I told Candace. Don't screw up. Meanwhile, the criminal case was moving forward. The prosecution had brought in digital forensics experts who analyzed Zach's computer and phone records. They found drafts of the fake text conversations going back months, and even a folder on his laptop labeled Operation Payback with detailed timelines and notes about the plan. Zach had been covering his tracks. He stayed off social media, avoided using credit cards, or anything that could be traced. The police thought he might be working under the table somewhere, but had no solid leads. The criminal prosecutor, Sarah, told me they were building charges that could put Zach away for up to 10 years if convicted on all counts. This isn't just a family dispute, she explained. Your brother committed serious crimes that affected multiple victims over several years. The court takes this kind of systematic harassment very seriously. My parents tried to reach out to Zach, hoping to convince him to come home and face the charges. They were still in denial about the extent of what he'd done, thinking maybe if he apologized and made amends, this could all be worked out. I had to set them straight on that. Zach destroyed my life for fun, I told them. This isn't something you apologize your way out of. He's going to prison, and he deserves every day of it. By month 5 of the investigation, we had enough evidence to convict Zach 10 times over. The only problem was finding him. But I knew Zach better than anyone, and I knew his weaknesses. He was arrogant, he needed to feel superior, and most importantly, he couldn't resist the urge to gloat about his victories. Sooner or later, he'd slip up. Justice was coming for him. It was just a matter of time. 7 months in, justice has finally been served. And holy shit, was it worth the wait? Zach finally got caught 4 weeks ago in Tucson, Arizona, of all places. He'd been working at a construction site under a fake name, living in some sketchy motel, basically existing like the fugitive piece of garbage he'd become. What got him caught? His own stupidity, of course. Apparently, he'd been drinking at some dive bar and started bragging to strangers about how he'd outsmarted everyone. Someone at the bar thought he sounded sketchy and called the local cops. When they ran his fake ID, it came back flagged, and boom, he was in handcuffs. The call from Detective Morrison was one of the best moments of my life. We got him, he said. Your brother is sitting in a holding cell in Arizona, and he's not going anywhere this time. They flew him back in shackles. The trial moved fast once he was back. His public defender tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the prosecutor wasn't having it. Your client had 6 months to come forward and take responsibility, Sarah told them. Instead, he chose to flee and waste taxpayer money on a manhunt. We're going to trial. The jury deliberated for 2 hours. 2 hours. They came back with guilty verdicts on all counts: conspiracy, fraud, identity theft, harassment, criminal impersonation, and something called aggravated stalking, because the harassment had gone on for multiple years. The judge sentenced him to 8 years in prison, followed by 5 years of probation. He also ordered Zach to pay $175,000 in restitution, $75,000 to me for damages, and $100,000 to cover court costs and the manhunt expenses. After the sentencing, I did something. I put in a request to visit Zach in prison. He picked up the phone on his side of the glass, and for a minute we just stared at each other. Then he said what I'd been waiting to hear for almost 5 years. I know why you're here. Do you? I asked. You want to gloat? You want to see me suffer? I leaned back in my chair and smiled. Actually, Zach, I don't need to tell you anything. Your life speaks for itself. Zach's face was getting red, but I wasn't done. You think you've won? I still took everything from you. I destroyed your wedding, your relationship with Candace, You took one thing from me, Zach. One. And in return, you lost everything. Your wife, your daughter, your career, your freedom, your future. You're going to spend years of your life in prison. I looked him directly in the eye. Haley never loved you. Candace figured out who you really are and left you. Your own parents are ashamed of you. And me? I'm living my best life while you rot in a cage. So tell me, brother, who really won here? Zach just stared at me, and for the first time in our entire lives, he had nothing to say. I stood up to leave, but I had one more thing to say. Oh, and Zach? Haley lives in Seattle now. She's married, has 2 kids, seems really happy. I looked her up on Facebook last week. She doesn't even remember your name. I hung up the phone and walked away, leaving Zach sitting there in his orange jumpsuit, finally understanding that his obsession had cost him everything. Finally, I thought that was the end of it. I was done with this whole nightmare. But apparently the universe wasn't done screwing with me yet. What happened next is so insane that I'm still trying to process it. So after my last meeting with Candace, I figured that was it. We'd both said what we needed to say, got our closure, end of story. I was wrong. Last week I'm working from home, minding my own business, when I hear a car door slam outside my apartment. Then I hear a kid crying, which gets my attention. I look out my window and nearly have a heart attack. There's Candace's car in my parking lot, and she's pulling that little girl out of the back seat. The kid is crying hysterically, clearly has no idea what's going on, and Candace looks like she's about 5 minutes away from a complete mental breakdown. Before I can even process what I'm seeing, Candace is marching up to my door with her daughter in tow. "I know you're in there," she's yelling. "I can't do this anymore." I open the door because the neighbors are starting to come out and stare. The second I open it, Candace pushes past me into my apartment, dragging Emma behind her. "She's your problem now," Candace says, and I swear to God, guys, she sounded completely unhinged. I never wanted to be a mother. I only had her because Zach wanted a kid, and now he's in prison, and I'm stuck with this mess. The little girl is looking back and forth between us crying. I'm standing there in complete shock, trying to figure out what the hell is happening. Candace starts ranting about how she can't handle being a single mom, how the kid reminds her too much of Zach, how she needs to start fresh without any reminders of her old life. "Why are you bringing her to me?" I ask, because none of this makes any sense. "Because you're the only decent man I know," she says. "Zach is a piece of garbage. My dad lives across the country, and I don't trust any of the other guys in my life." "Candace," I said, "I can't just take your daughter. That's not how this works. She needs her mother." "I don't want to be her mother anymore," she screamed, loud enough that the kids started crying even harder. "I'm done. I'm moving back in with my sister in California, and I'm not taking her with me." At this point, I'm realizing that Candace has completely lost it. I told her she needed to leave, that she needed to get help, that abandoning her child wasn't a solution to anything. But she was already headed for the door. "If you won't take her, I'll just leave her at a fire station or something," she said. "At least then she'll be someone else's problem." That's when I knew I couldn't let her walk out that door. Not with that kid. So I called the police. She tried to leave, but I blocked the door until the cops showed up. When they arrived, the whole situation became a nightmare of paperwork, phone calls, and social services involvement. Long story short, Candace was deemed unfit to care for her daughter and was placed under psychiatric evaluation. The kid needed somewhere to go while they figured out a long-term placement. Since I was the only stable adult present who had any connection to the situation, and since my parents vouched for me when social services called them, I ended up with temporary emergency custody while they worked out a permanent solution. That was 2 weeks ago. Emma is still here. My parents have been helping out, visiting every day. Candace is in some kind of inpatient treatment facility and isn't allowed to make decisions about Emma's care right now. Emma's been through hell. Her dad abandoned her, her mom tried to give her away, and now she's living with someone she barely knows in a completely unfamiliar place. But she's tougher than she looks. She started sleeping through the night, and yesterday she asked if she could help me make pancakes. I don't know what's going to happen long term, but we contacted Candace's parents, and there's talk they're applying for permanent custody since they're blood relatives and have the stability to provide for her. The one thing I know for sure, Emma deserves better than the family she was born into. Whether that ends up being me, my parents, or Candace's parents, she's going to get it. That's a promise. So that's it for now, Reddit. Thanks for reading this whole insanity. Here's to better days ahead.